Hi weaving friends, I'm here today to show you a very messy drawer. Not really, I'm not here just to show you the drawer, but the drawer is an important part of this project and actually inspired this project in the first place. The project is some notebook covers. We're going to weave a couple of notebook covers and I think these would make beautiful Christmas gifts. They're small, quick to weave and very easy, simple to put together. Let me tell you more about the story of this drawer. So as you can see, this drawer contains all types of fibers in a less than optimal state. So this is one of my yarn drawers, and no, you're not allowed to ask how many yarn drawers I have because I'm not going to tell you, but I know that I'm not alone in that, so I don't feel bad. This is the yarn drawer that I give my girls access to. They can come to this drawer and they can use whatever yarn is in here and they can use it for whatever they want to do. They do all kinds of things with it. They knit, they crochet, they use it for their little horse toys, all kinds of things they come up with to do with this. But as a result, this is what it looks like. And it's not all that accessible. Anyway, the story is that I came to this drawer the other day. I was looking for a particular yarn and I opened this drawer up and I just went, wow, that's messy. But then I looked at all of the colours and I looked at the fact that a lot of these yarns are just like really small pieces. And, you know, I've even thrown like some of my thrums in there. If you don't know what thrums are, they're like the leftovers of your warp when you cut your warp off when you finish weaving. And most of the time you will have thrums. Sometimes you'll have a lot, sometimes you'll have a little. Anyway, so for example, things like this, if I pull out some strands, you can see that they're just a certain length, they're all in lengths. So I thought, how can I use some of these up? Because the drawer's pretty full and I would probably like to minimize that just a little bit. So then I thought of notebook covers because I really like making notebook covers, whether it's weaving them, sewing them, whatever it is for special books. And then I thought, hey, that would be a great Christmas gift idea. So that brings me to the project. The idea is that if you have a stash of yarn, if you have scraps of yarn, thrums left over, then this is a perfect project for you. This is something that you can make these scraps useful for and also be generous in giving to others by giving them gifts. And of course you can make some for yourself as well. You will need a longer length for the warp. That's the only thing. You can't use the shorter lengths for the warp because you don't want to have knots all through your warp. So preferably you have a longer ball of yarn, something like this, for your warp. I will be giving all of the amounts that you'll need and all of the specific details in PDF format, and I will link to that below. I'm not sure yet. It'll probably be on my blog, maybe on my online school as well, probably. So yeah, you can access it in the way that you prefer. I'm going to be weaving this on my samplet loom, and I've got that fully warped across the width, and this is a great size for doing a project like this because you don't need a lot of space. And I know a lot of you out there do have little looms and you're always looking for little loom projects, so this is a good one for you. Now there's a couple of different ways you can approach this depending on what sort of state your stash is in and what your personal tastes are. So as you saw, my drawer was very messy. And so one way of sort of making a start on this project is to start grabbing out lengths of yarn depending on, you know, how terribly messy it is. Sometimes for me it's pulling out lengths of yarn and then just cutting them off because they're in such a tangly mess. And making little balls, and I've just made these little balls by just going around a few of my fingers. I haven't taken the time to make yarn butterflies or anything fancy, just around my fingers, quick and easy. Doesn't take long to make up a little ball, and then you've got one ready to go. And I've got a bunch of those. So if you make some like that, just small lengths, You could color code them if you wanted to, depending on how many colors you have, or you could do what I'm going to do, a sort of random approach. Also, if you didn't want to go to the trouble of making up little balls first, you could just do what I did for my first notebook cover, and that is I just had the drawer sitting next to me and I just quickly made little balls as I went. I'm not going to be using a shuttle for this because I only have a narrow width of warp, so I can get my fingers through there. And really, for this many colors, can you imagine trying to load up shuttles for that? That would just be a pain. So it's easy to just pass these little balls through, as long as they are small enough, pass them through the shed and do it that way. Now this is going to be in your notes as well, but another thing that I should mention at this point is that you will need a notebook, and you need to have a hard cover. So you can pick up these notebooks pretty affordably at office supply stores or anywhere like that. And I'm using a fairly small one because that is what fits my warp really well. This one is from Teachable. If you don't know what Teachable is, it's where I host my online courses. I have my online weaving school with them, and they very kindly sent me this. They send freebies from time to time. They're really lovely, and this is just a perfect little book to do this with. So that's the one that I'm going to use. Now another thing that I didn't mention is about my yarns, that all of the yarns are different thicknesses and they're different types, and that's fine. That's what this project really shines with as well. So some of these are wool, some of them are cotton, some are hand dyed, some are hand spun. I've got fingering weight, I've got worsted weight, I've got Aran weight. They're all different, and I'm just going to keep changing them up. Now you do have, when you use different weights for your weft, you will have a bit of drawing in at different times at your edges, but that doesn't matter because at the end the edges are going to be encased. So I'm not really fussed about what my edges are going to look like necessarily. I've got my warp all set up, I've got my warp separators in, and I should mention as well that if this is too advanced for you at the moment, I really recommend my beginner's rigid heddle loom, my beginner's rigid heddle weaving course, which is called From Woe to Go, and it will get you completely set up on your rigid heddle loom and teach you how to weave your first project. I'll link to that down below too, but I'm going to start weaving. And so for my last cover that I did just before this one, I made it really random, and I think I will do this one fairly similarly because I like the way it turned out, and I also just really like to weave randomly sometimes because a lot of the weaving I do is very planned and sometimes meticulous, and so it's nice to sometimes just go, well, I'm just gonna, I don't know, just go with the flow and do what I think and see how it looks and make my decisions as I go. So you can see that I'm just sort of poking the balls through and not fussing with shuttles. I'm using wool for my warp. You can use cotton or whatever you like. The only thing is because wool is slightly elastic, it stretches a little. So if you're using wool in the warp, you need to be aware that your total warp length may shrink back a little more than if you use cotton. But as I said, I'll have the PDF for you, and that will have measurements, and I'll explain those things in the PDF as well. Okay, so I'm just going along and not really thinking too much about what I'm doing, but I feel at this time that this can be my last weft row of this one, and then I'm going to change to something else. Alright, so to change, I'm just going to cut and leave a little tail. And then I'm in the down shed. I've already changed to the next shed, so I'm ready for that. And I'm just going to tuck my tail in about 2 warp threads deep, and then I'm going to fix it with my fingers around the edge like I normally would, and then that tail's just going to sit in there. Now I'm going to come in with my new yarn. Let's see, what will I come in with next? Something bright. Yes, tennis ball bright I'd call this. And then as I weave that one in, I'm going to leave a tail with that as well, hanging out of that edge. Beat, change sheds, and then I can tuck that new tail in. Now the only thing that you need to really think about when you're changing colours is try to alternate. Try not to change colours all on the same side or too much on the same side, because then you'll get a build up. You can see there I've already got a little lump. It's not a problem, but I want to sort of alternate that to distribute it on either side. Right, so that one is so bright that I don't want too much of it at the moment. So I'll just put one more pick in, and I will cut that, leaving a tail. I will tuck it into this side because I've already changed to the next shed. So about 2 warp threads deep again. And then I'll choose my next colour. Let's see, I'm going to go with a dark. So this one's a bit thinner, a black. Oh, my tail's wanting to come out, I'll just pull it back down. So I leave a tail for that one as well. Yes, you're going to end up with a lot of tails, but it really doesn't matter because of the sewing method we're going to use for the cover. So I'll tuck that new tail in. So you see what I mean about distributing the weight of the tails. Now I've got 2 tuck-ins on this side, I've got 2 tuck-ins on this side, so I'm pretty even. So this would be a nice time to maybe experiment with some clasped weft or something like that as well. That'd look good. Now when we actually make these into notebook covers, they're going to be so that, that we're making them long, but these stripes are going to be vertical on the book. So if you can imagine, the book's going to be this way. So these are going to be vertical across the book. That's how I can make them fit to this loom, because otherwise it wouldn't be wide enough. So we're going with the length. So imagine if you did a clasped weft, so to be running horizontal as you're weaving it, but on your notebook it would be vertical. And imagine doing, say, a black or a grey with like some maybe sunset colours or something as the contrast. And then when you turn it on its side, turn it vertical, it might look a bit like a cityscape. That'd be cool. You could try it. I've got a clasped weft video. No, I've got several clasped weft videos, and I will try to I'll try to link to those. Here's another little cool effect. I'm going to continue with this weft in a moment, but I'm going to put just one shot of a contrasting colour and a contrasting size in. So I'm going to do white with the black, and I'll show you what happens when you do that. So I'm still leaving a tail, okay, and I'm continuing my black, so I'm not cutting that off, but on this side I can cut that one so it's got a tail as well. Alright, and I can beat that into place, go into the next shed and tuck both of those tails in on either side to get them out of the way. And then carry on with the black. However, you might need to go around this edge to catch it. So I'm going underneath my bottom warp thread and then into the shed. And then when I beat it, I have what kind of looks like white dots, which is quite a nice effect. So you can do that with any yarn, but good to do highly contrasting colors and different widths of yarn, weights of yarn I should say. And then I'm going to do a few more picks of black to really make that white stand out as a kind of little border effect. I'm not really counting any of the picks that I do. I'm not worried about having perfect symmetry or anything like that. As I said, it's just fun and free. It's nice to give yourself permission to just weave. Alright, so I'll do one more pick because my last tail ended on that side, not including the white, but the last tail I did before that. So I'll end this one on the opposite side. Just going to cut the tail there and beat into the next shed and tuck the tail in. Alright, I'm going to just advance my warp a little. I'll go into neutral for that. Okay, so here's what we've got so far. Looking good. Pretty random, but it all ties together. And so now I can just choose my next colour according to what shed I was in. I think I was going into the down shed. Yep. I'm going to choose something bright again. Now this is a really thin one. This is almost a lace weight, a hand dyed one. Leaving a tail. And tuck that in. Depending on the weight of yarn you use as well, these can be a really quick project. So if you're kind of stressing for Christmas gifts, you know you want to do some more handmade Christmas gifts, but you don't have much time, these really don't take much time. If you used a lot of these really thin yarns to do it, it'll take a little longer. But if you use the thicker ones, they really weave up very, very quickly. So I often choose, if I'm weaving randomly like this, I'll choose the next colour based on the last couple of colours. I won't go completely random because I'm aware that there are some colours that don't look all that nice together. And I'm also choosing not to use colours like brown or I'm not even using grey. I am a real fan of grey, but I'm not using it in this project. Especially brown, because brown looks great with more neutral colours. And I don't want to have like a muddy effect. I'm going to cut that one now. And I'm going to tuck the tail in. And I'm going to choose, nope. I think I need some blue in here. I do need some blue, but that one's really thin again. I don't want to use a thin one straight away after another thin one. So I'm going to go with this blue. Another cool thing about using the different weights of yarn is it gives a really different effect on the actual weaving. So the finer yarn gives really nice fine little rows, and the other ones that are thicker are a bit chunkier, and the contrast between the two is really nice. It doesn't look wrong at all, it just looks nice. Tucking in my tail. So I'd love to know if any of you think these are a good Christmas idea, and if you intend to make any. I'd love to know. And as always, I love to see your finished projects as well. I love it when people share things with me that they've done. And what's really interesting is people often have their own interpretation of what I've done. Some weavers will do exactly what I've done, especially newer weavers who are a bit unsure about things. But very often I get weavers who have their own interpretation, and I love to see that because they can think of colours and arrangements that I wouldn't normally think of. And I love to see what other people like and how my designs look in different colours and different arrangements. So it's really fun for me to be able to see that too. I like this blue, so I'm going with this for a little while. So I'm using a light worsted weight wool for my warp. And that's because I've got a 7.5 dent Heddle. That's the only Heddle that I actually have for this little loom at the moment. I'm sure I'll collect more as the years go by. But so I wanted to choose a weight of yarn that was appropriate for that. And that's a great thing about a project like this too, is you can just adapt it to your own situation. So if you have a different sized Heddle, you can use a different weight of yarn. Alright, I think I'm nearly done with blue. It is such a pretty blue though. I did once knit one of my girls a cardigan out of this blue, and it was just so pretty. Alright. So I'm going to cut that one. So I think you get the idea, right? It's not very complicated, and you can make a lot of your own choices with this once you have the basic information. And from here on, it's really just continuing weaving. So I'm going to keep doing that. I will pause in a little while to show you one other basic technique that I like to use in something like this. But for now, I'm going to speed up the weaving a little bit and go from there. You know what I'm going to do right now though, is I'm going to get a cup of tea, because I think it's cup of tea o'clock. So if it's cup of tea o'clock wherever you are in the world, go ahead, go and boil the kettle, make yourself a nice cup of tea, and come and settle back to your weaving with tea. Perfect.